Where in the heart of West Memphis, 10 years later, discussions continue on whether the West Memphis Three are guilty or innocent. One thing many of them can agree on, though, the notorious case forever changed the city.
What happened in these woods shook even hardened cops. It was a crime so terrible, families for miles around lived in fear. And at the time, juries had no doubt. 3 West Memphis, Arkansas teenagers were guilty in the satanic ritual murders of 3 8-year-old boys. But a decade and a half later, many now believe it was a case of justice gone bad.
If the West Memphis Three are innocent, as Damian Eccles supporters claim, then someone had to have murdered the 3 boys.
Hi, I'm Natalie Maines, and I support the West Memphis Three. Blind justice is the theory that law should be viewed objectively. Determination of innocence or guilt should be made without bias or prejudice. Equal justice under law is the foundation of the U.S. Supreme Court. This is not always indicative of fairness. Almost 15 years ago, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were wrongly convicted of the murders of 3 young children in West Memphis, Arkansas.
I'm going to scream Terry Hobbs since my last breath. I believe in my heart, in my opinion, my belief. Killed 3 babies on that.
To many, they've become known as the West Memphis Three. Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly were all teenagers sent to prison for the gruesome satanic ritual murders of 3 8-year-old boys. And 14 years after the crime, proving their innocence may depend on 2 human hairs recovered at the scene.
A recent DNA test found hair fibers on one of the victim's shoelaces matched Terry Hobbs. He was Steve Branch's stepfather. We asked Terry Hobbs to comment. He declined.
Get worldwide
a satanic panic that they say sent 3 innocent teenagers to prison.
After death or before death sometimes, they scrape the body. They move their claws on the body and try to bring the body closer to them. They do this several times. And you have here 2 of the victims that have the same identical injury. And the spacing and the configuration of those injuries is not compatible with a serrated knife such as this, or, for that matter, any knife.
One side is going to be right, and the other is going to be wrong. Either there's really was no evidence, or there was plenty of evidence. And I concluded there was
the police, the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, all of them got it wrong?
In our opinion, yes.
What I believe that rinsed that all off, I believe it was Hobbs carrying the children one at a time down in the water, maybe going back and getting clothes, sticking them down in there. I believe him transporting and moving right there. You're in trouble. Stevie knows he's going to get his ass beat, so he says no. Terry whacks him. They, rendered him unconscious. The other 2 boy freaks, people go, why wouldn't they run? Well, hell, there's
stab wounds. If somebody's going to use a knife, what do you do with a knife? You run around and scrape with it like this? I mean, come on. You stab with a knife. There are no stab wounds on these. Any one of the 3 have no stab wounds. So this knife didn't cause any injuries. No knife caused any injuries. And the injuries to the body were post-mortem done by animals.
That there's no credible evidence that links any of these defendants.
Isn't all of this frustrating?
Frustrating doesn't even begin to describe what all this is.
Police arrested 3 teenagers, including an alleged devil-worshipping ringleader named Damian Eccles. Eccles and 16-year-old Jason Baldwin denied involvement, but 17-year-old Jesse Miskelly confessed, telling authorities they killed the boys after a chance encounter in the woods. Miskelly, who defense attorneys claim has a low IQ, now says the confessions were coerced. Despite a lack of significant physical evidence linking the teens to the crime, all 3 were found guilty. Eccles was sentenced to death.
If the DNA excludes you, why are you in prison?
We, the jury, find Damian Eccles guilty of capital murder and the death of Chris Byers.
From the Varner unit at Supermax State Prison Facility in Grady, Arkansas, we're joined by Damian Eccles, who is on death row. He recently had a birthday, by the way. He's 33 years old. How long have you been on death row?
About 14 years. All in all, I've been locked up almost 15 years.
Now, there's so-called, let's get into it, new evidence in your case. It's encouraged a lot of your defenders, and there are many, to feel optimistic. Give us the story. What's new?
There are several things, but I think the main one is probably the DNA testing. They said it revealed no evidence of me or the other two guys who were convicted of this crime at the crime scene. There was also evidence that said that what the prosecution had alleged were knife wounds, things of that nature, were actually more along the lines of post-mortem injuries inflicted by snapping turtles and other things that would have been in the woods. And the police picked him up, and who knows what they did to him for 12 or 14 hours before they finally say that he confessed. The problem was, once he did confess, pretty much not a single detail of what he said was right.
Miss Kelly was borderline retarded. He was told when he said he wasn't involved in satanic activity that he had failed the polygraph on that question. He didn't fail the polygraph. He said that he marched the boys off. He took them off their bikes while they were on their way to school at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, those boys were in school, as they were all of that day. He said one victim was choked to death. Absolutely false. None of the victims were choked. The boys, he said, were beaten with their clothes on, badly beaten with their clothes on. All of their clothes were recovered. There was no blood on them. They take this statement to a judge. He refuses to give a warrant. He says, you've given me a statement that doesn't describe these crimes. They occurred in the evening, not in the morning. They go back to Miss Kelly in the interrogation and tell him that he had said that it was 8 o'clock at night, which he never had.
You feel like that the attorneys are accusing you of this crime?
The answer to that would be no.
Hobbs agreed to go in front of our cameras while his attorney did the talking. And through most of my questions, Hobbs remained silent. Is it possible, Mr. Hobbs, that that was your hair?
Sure. It was his son, Stephen Branch, who was murdered, and he's had to deal with this for the last 15 years.
Had they lived, the three little boys would be 18 now. The three teens are now men in their late 20s, living their lives behind bars.
Now in their 30s, their entire adult lives spent behind bars. Three grown men greet the DNA findings with hope, wondering if this latest twist will one day set them free.
The West Memphis 3 continue to get lots of support. Musicians and others in the entertainment industry have stepped forward, raising money for the Free the West Memphis 3 Defense Fund, money that's paying for more experienced attorneys and, more than likely, advanced DNA testing on certain pieces of evidence. And attorney Dan Stidham tells us he hopes that process can begin.
Greetings, citizens. We are anonymous. Since the launch of Operation WM3 in November of 2014, Anonymous has been asked to research case files regarding the case of the West Memphis 3. Anonymous had promised to research the case with unbias. Despite this, non-supporters attempted to inject bias almost during the entire investigation. Anonymous and WM3 supporters have held steadfast on the journey for truth and the journey for justice. Now, we have determined that it is time to announce our ultimate findings, our goal, and our efforts, and to send a message to not only the West Memphis 3, but also those responsible for abandoning and derailing justice. When Anonymous launched Operation WM3, it was very clear that our objective was not to focus on those convicted of the crime, but to seek justice for the 3 children who were murdered on May 5, 1993. It was our goal to determine if the 3 convicted were in fact guilty, or if the evidence in fact points to others. Anonymous took this approach because justice cannot be served for the 3 children unless the real murderer or murderers are held accountable for the horrendous crime committed. Over the past 2 months, Anonymous has heard the arguments from all sides of the spectrum. We have been offered theories from both supporters and non-supporters. Of all the theories offered, Anonymous has only found 4 theories to be plausible. Out of the 4 plausible theories, 2 include the same suspect. After researching the case and reading over all case files, it is undeniably and logically obvious that Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin and Jesse Misskelley are innocent. They were offered the Alford plea because the state knew that there would be no way a jury today would convict the 3 based on the evidence provided to the jury in 1994. They offered the plea as an attempt to save face, and to save themselves from being sued for wrongfully convicting 3 men for a crime they did not commit. Our message to Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin and Jesse Misskelley: no one knows more than the 3 of you the injustice that was forced upon you in 1994. Nothing can give you back the 18 years that was stolen from you by not only the misconduct of the West Memphis Police Department but also by a rogue juror, the failure of an incompetent and dishonest prosecutor, uneducated experts and a judge that cared more about his career than justice. Your faith and determination for justice is inspiring. Through the discovery of evidence, DNA, failed alibi, deceit, and suspicious behavior regarding this case, it is the belief of Anonymous that the person guilty of this crime is Terry Wayne Hobbs, the stepfather of Steve Branch. Mr. Hobbs, not only was your DNA discovered at the scene, you state that you were at the woods at the time of the murder searching for the children. This would mean that you would have seen the murders occur. However, your only response is that you were unaware of what you were looking for or where to look. The layout of the area makes this virtually impossible. Your alibi using Mr. David Jacoby was adamantly denied by Mr. Jacoby. You in fact have no alibi. Your DNA was found at the scene of the crime. Your attorney has stated that your DNA was present because Steve Branch was your stepson. Your attorney has failed to say that it was not Steve's ligature that your hair was found in. Non-supporters use much less to proclaim the guilt of the West Memphis 3. You continue to ignore these claims in the hopes that they will fade away. You continue to decline answering for any of these things at all. The goal of Anonymous is not the pardon of the men known as the West Memphis 3. Our goal is to have the case reopened and a real investigation conducted. Through this, will come the exoneration of Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin and Jesse Misskelley. Our message to the state of Arkansas, the West Memphis Police Department and Governor Asa Hutchinson: it is your duty as those hired and elected to seek justice and closure. It is your duty to do so without politics and financial agenda. It is your obligation to the 3 children who were murdered in 1993 to reopen this case and find justice for these children and those accused of the crime. As stated in our last message to the former governor and police department, if these were your children, you would not stop until you knew the absolute truth, until you knew without doubt who the murderer of your children was. You would be vigilant in your quest for justice. You owe this same vigilance to the 3 small victims of this crime. Just because these children were not your own, their lives are not worth less. A petition has been created for the purpose of reopening this case. While the petition is continuing to get signatures, it has been presented to Governor Hutchinson. Governor Hutchinson, the world is watching to see if you are an honorable man for justice, or if you are merely a new political puppet, sitting in the seat of the last puppet. Your voters have signed this petition. If you ignore this petition, we will ask your citizens to end your political career. On May 5, 2015, Anonymous and supporters of this cause will descend on the state capitol to rally for justice. Support is growing. We will continue to, and increasingly be, a thorn in your side until you do the right thing. Governor Asa Hutchinson and the West Memphis Police Department: we are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.